Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Game of Thrones When It's Coming. Last week we did the video about the new commander weapons for Jaime, Snara and Layla. And I got a question about formations, because I mentioned how formations were stat based on their awakening skills, and people were wondering what I meant with that. And because of that, I've decided that in this video today we are going to take about a specific formation focused around Jaime's skill. And we'll be going through the 4 other commanders that are supporting him in his skill setup, and then we are going to take a look at the weaknesses and strengths of that specific formation and how difficult it is to get, basically. So let's jump right into it. So to begin with, on how to understand formations, the game has basically added a button where you can check out what formations are available for specific commanders. Currently we are looking at Jaime because we want Jaime to be our main component in the formation that we are trying to create. And if you click on the button over here, you can see an example for how a formation can work and what the benefits of that specific formation is. You can see here that there are total army bonuses, which are coming from Peter and Jaime himself. There's spearman bonuses, which are from Drake and Hector. And then there's of course healing and weakness attack, which is the part where the awakening skills of the commanders come into play, which has a major focus around how you set up your formations. Of course, this formation here that is recommended is not cheap, because Peter is one of the most expensive commanders in the game currently, and because of that you might think, well, can I even make this formation setup system work? And that's where I come in. I can give you an idea of how to tinker around with awakening and give a suggestion to how you can make a certain awakening skill setup or formation setup for your commanders. In my case, I've decided to use Jaime as the base, and with his awakening skill, Hear Me Roar, you will basically get certain attributes added to you. His awakening skill basically works in the way that when allied lineup will receive healing, the lineup's normal attack changes to weakness attack for 5 seconds, and weakness attack status attacks the enemy lineup with the most troops lost and cannot miss for every one weakness attack taken by target lineup, weakness damage taken +3. So it's basically a way you can see the lineup to be a tank, in the sense that you have to endure a lot of hits and heal up your damages that you take, but at the same time you're also putting out damage back in terms of weakness attacks. And the keystone for this specific awakening to be triggered is the healing part. So you have to look at commanders that have healing in their awakening skill setup or their skills, and that way you can get the most value out of Jaime. So you're going to take a look at the next commander to supply with Jaime's awakening skill setup. So for the next commander we have Arslan. Arslan is a spear commander focused around spear attack and spear health, if I remember correctly. And of course he also has an awakening skill, and because both Jaime and Arslan are spear commanders with spear stats built in, they synergize in the sense that they buff up the same troop type, which works in the current meta where a lot of the accounts are focusing on one specific troop type to maximize their damage output and the ability to take hits. And the awakening skill from Arslan is basically called Pain Inhibition, and it's pretty simple. In battle, every 8 seconds, Commander Arslan heals 2% of the wounded for the allied troop with the greatest losses. And because of that, you basically get a activation for the Jaime skill every 8 seconds from Arslan, and this of course also triggers the weakness attack, so you basically heal some of your troops at the same time while dealing extra damage because of it for the next 5 seconds after. So it's basically it's just the 8 first seconds of the match where Arslan can't really use the skill well before the skill activates, but after the first 8 seconds then the skill will be only down every 3 seconds where you don't get any benefit from it. But that's part of it, where you use other commanders to try and line up how the specific skill sets work. The third commander that we are adding into the formation is Commander Drake, and as the two others, Commander Drake is focused around spear. He has, I believe, 40% spear attack, spear health and spear defense, if I remember correctly, and this of course means that right now we have a setup where you can see where it's going. It's basically starting to form a full spear setup, as well as I mentioned before, and this is because both the awakening skills from him supplied with the basic stats synergize with the other two, and to understand how this works you will have to know what the awakening skill does. And his awakening skill is when in battle, every 3 seconds, Commander Drake increases ally spearman lineup defense by 7%, which can stack up to 5 times, which means that after 15% or 15 seconds it will be fully stacked. And at full stacks, every 3 seconds, Commander Drake heals 1% of the wounded for each ally spearman lineup. So you can see that you basically need to have spear focused commanders. Otherwise, the lineup that doesn't have a spearman commander will not have the healing benefit. From what I understand, it could be understood on other ways, but you get a commander here that basically works in between Arslan and his skills, and that way they cover for each other, and it triggers Jaime skill even more. And of course the benefits with the spear stats of course also helps into that aspect. The fourth commander that we're taking a look at is Hector. Hector, as the other 3 commanders, is a spear commander, and he has focus around the spearman defense, spearman attack, and some cavalry health reductions I believe as well. And in general he's a really good commander. He's a little bit tricky to get because you have to get him through the Reward Memories event, but I think that it's not that big of a deal that you can include him. Of course the tokens will take some time to farm, but you can get him. His awakening skill basically works in the sense that after the first time army active skill damage is taken by each allied lineups at the front, all immediately heal 50% of the troops lost due to the damage taken. At the same time the lineup's attack increases by 15%. So it's a one-time skill, but it still activates Jaime's effect, as well as giving your troops a increased attack. And 50% increased attack is a lot in my opinion, and it's also working on all 5 at the same time, so it basically triggers the skill from Jaime on all 5 lineups immediately, and gives you a kind of a burst damage increase. And it's also fairly simple for you to get the skills activate. However, do keep in mind that there are comps out there that do not activate active skills, which means that if they do not activate active skills, then his active skill will not activate, or awakening skill will not activate, and you will basically lose a commander in that sense, and that's the downside of using him. But otherwise a really good choice for this specific setup in my opinion. The last spear commander was actually a bit tricky to find a good answer for, mostly because of the fact that there are a couple of spear commanders yet that have yet to be awakened. We do not know the awakening skills of them, and there aren't that many left that have healing incorporated into their awakening skill, which suits into this specific troop setup or troop formation that we're working with. But my last choice for now would be Annie with the current awakening skills that we have. Annie's awakening skill is very offensive. It doesn't trigger the Jaime skill, but it helps you in terms of withstanding pressure from the enemy side. And Annie's awakening skill works in the sense that when casting an active army skill directly, wipe out 3% of the target's currently deployed troops. The value cannot exceed 3% of Annie's current deployed troops, which is of course really nice. But when you have the healing also working into that specific composition, you have the damage increase from Hector, you can start to whittle down your enemy more and more while you start, after maybe half the battle is gone, you start to heal back your troops while the enemy is losing more and more troops. And Annie also works in the sense that her basic buffs are built around spear health and total attack, and That of course also increases the general stats that the formation has, and I personally think that she can work really well into this specific setup. Not as good as in the female setup, but she can work into this setup. And I do believe that should be all 5 commanders that we have covered right now. So that covers the 5 commanders that we are going to use for the spear healing setup that I have added here. And if I've done things correctly, you will see a general screen of the skills in front of you, and you will see that the troop type is basically focused on spear, which of course means that you will be weak towards infantry. The entire setup revolves around having certain active skills and healing skills activate, and sometimes you're also relying on the enemy to have skills to activate. And because of that, you will have situations where there is a certain infantry on-hit comp that works, that do not use any extra skill at all, so you basically lose a commander in form of Hector there, the awakening skill from him. But otherwise the setup is really great in the sense that it actually can do a decent amount of damage while also keeping, like, rotating your troops through heals and shields, and slowly depleting your enemy through weakness attacks, as well as the any skill, which also slowly drains down enemies. And I personally think it's a really good setup for those that want to focus down on spear, and it's cheaper than having to actually use Peter in this specific setup and a bunch of other commanders. So yeah, I hope you liked the video. Like and comment if you want to, subscribe to the channel if you're new. And of course, the links for the game is down in the description below, as well for the Game of Thrones Winners Coming Discord group, and the channel where I get my music from. I wish you all a great weekend. Hope you have a good KVK, and we are going to see each other probably during next week. So have fun, take care, bye bye.